Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales and boundless imagination come to life. Enjoy the story and don't forget to subscribe. Alan Durbis slumped against the pulsating, bioluminescent bar of the cosmic guzzler, watching a bubble of Xeno ale float aimlessly in his glass. The holographic advertisements outside splashed garish colors across the dingy interior, a pathetic imitation of the glittering spaceliner lounges he'd only ever dreamed of visiting. Another year spiraling down the drain, and he was still stuck on this dead-end gig, he grumbled inwardly, running a hand through his perpetually disheveled brown hair. His buddy, Finn, leaned in close, already 3 nebula nips deep. "Dude, you gotta ditch those cruise commercials. They're scientifically engineered to make us worker drones feel like crap." "Easy for you to say, Finn. You've actually seen the rings of Saturn." Alan downed his ale in one go, welcoming the brief numbing sensation. "I assemble robo-cleaners. The closest I get to a starship is when I bolt fusion drives onto those tin cans." The bar's holoscreen shimmered with footage of the Stardust Voyager, the latest luxury liner, blasting off from Neo Alexandria. Sleek, magnificent, obscenely expensive. Alan's annual salary wouldn't even cover a meal in the economy-class mess hall. "Birthday boy needs a serious pick-me-up," Finn bellowed, waving to the tentacled bartender. "Hey, Zorp, crack open that new blend, the one with the biohazard label." Zorp, a hulking being with iridescent scales, reached under the counter. "You mean the quantum quencher? That stuff's got some kick, boys. Synth alcohol infused with, well, let's just say it's from beyond the galactic rim." Alan's better judgment tried to intervene, but his simmering frustration overruled it. "I'm turning 28 today. Pour it." The liquid shimmered with an unearthly green glow, tiny vortexes swirling within. Finn raised his glass. "To Alan, may he somehow stumble his way into the cosmos, or at least into a decent promotion." "To stumbling," Alan echoed, clinking glasses. The quencher hit him like a plasma cannon. The bar twisted, colors blurring into abstract patterns, voices fading into a distant, garbled echo. The last thing he remembered was Zorp muttering something about minor dimensional bleed-through, before oblivion swallowed him whole. Consciousness returned with the force of a neutron star colliding with his skull, and the overwhelming sense that something was profoundly, cosmically wrong. Alan's cheek was pressed against a surface that felt like polished crystal, yet seemed to thrum with a faint energy. "I contend that the principles of transdimensional entanglement," a deep, booming voice declared somewhere above him. "Oh, please," a different voice retorted, this one melodic and sharp. "You're still stuck in the theoretical phase. Show me empirical data, Vrook." Alan forced his eyes open, immediately regretting it. He lay sprawled on a platform that shimmered with light, suspended between towering spires that defied all known laws of architecture and gravity. Bridges of pure energy connected the structures, and vessels resembling liquid mercury zipped between them. "What the actual?" Alan groaned, pushing himself to his knees. What did Zorp put in that drink? The voices, he now realized, emanated from 2 colossal statues. One seemed to be crafted from swirling nebulae, the other from interlocking geometric shapes that constantly shifted and reconfigured. "Ah, the organic has regained consciousness," the nebula statue intoned. "Perhaps he would care to contribute to our discourse on interspatial harmonics?" Alan stared at them, then at his own hands, to confirm they were still there. They were, though the platform beneath them pulsed with patterns that seemed to respond to his movements. "Nope," he declared, scrambling to his feet. "Nope, nope, nope. This has gotta be the mother of all hangovers, or some next-level virtual reality. I'm going back to sleep." "I'm afraid sleep will not alter your current predicament," a new voice purred. Alan whirled around to find a holographic fox hovering at eye level, its form composed of swirling constellations. "Welcome to Ethelgard, mortal," the fox announced. "I am your designated orientation guide, Flicker." Alan burst out laughing. Of course you are. A talking space fox. Why not? And those are probably quantum debating statues, and this is probably some alien planet, right? All accurate observations, Flicker replied, unfazed. Though your tone suggests skepticism. Your records indicate you are from Earth, Sol system. A rather primitive species, still reliant on chemical rockets for interstellar travel. How quaint. Alan was about to retort when something caught his eye. A group of enormous praying mantises in formal attire were gathered at what appeared to be a floating bar nearby, sipping cocktails through their mandibles. Those are arthropodon diplomats, Flicker explained. Would you care to meet them? They are quite fond of discussing their vintage insectoid wines. Giant bugs who drink wine. Sure, why not? Alan strode toward them with the confident swagger of someone utterly convinced none of this was real. Hey, guys. Love the suits. Very. Men in black, you know. The mantises turned their multifaceted eyes toward him, antennae twitching. One of them clicked its mandibles in what might have been amusement. A human. How utterly delightful, it said in flawless galactic standard. I haven't encountered one since that charming fellow Armstrong visited. Would you care for a glass of Centaurian nectar, aged 500 cycles? 500 cycles, huh? Alan accepted the crystalline glass, noting how it seemed to contain a miniature galaxy swirling within. So, quick question, when did bugs start wearing Armani? This is actually xylosilk, the mantis replied, adjusting its tie with one of its forelimbs. Armani is rather terrestrial, don't you think? Alan took a sip of the nectar. It tasted like liquid starlight and warm summer evenings, somehow distilled into pure sensation. Okay, this is officially the best hallucination ever. Though my imagination's getting a bit too creative with the metaphors. The holographic fox materialized beside him. I must inform you that the Royal Convocation is about to commence its daily session. As a newly arrived being, you are required to attend. Royal Convocation? You mean, like, with a king and everything? The Sovereign Regent of Ethelgard, and his daughter, Princess Amara, yes, Flicker's star-filled form rippled. Though I must caution you regarding proper etiquette. Nah, don't spoil it, Alan grinned, the alien alcohol making him even more reckless. Let me guess, lots of bowing, your majesties, and don't look them in the eye. Before the fox could respond, the very air seemed to shimmer. The floating platform they stood on began moving of its own accord, joining a stream of other platforms all heading toward what looked like a colossal crystalline structure suspended in the sky. The throne room, if that's what it was, defied all known laws of physics and geometry. The walls seemed to fold in on themselves, creating impossible angles that somehow worked. The ceiling was a panoramic view of deep space, actual stars and nebulae swirling overhead. Alan found himself surrounded by a crowd of the most diverse beings he could have ever imagined, creatures of pure energy, humanoids with extra limbs or unusual colorations, what appeared to be sentient clouds, and more of those well-dressed mantises. The Royal Convocation of Ethelgard welcomes all beings, announced a voice that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. And then Alan saw her. Princess Amara entered through a portal of pure light, and Alan's breath caught in his throat. Her skin was a deep, rich sapphire that seemed to shimmer with its own inner luminescence. Silver eyes, literally silver, like pools of liquid moonlight, surveyed the crowd with regal grace. Her form was perfectly humanoid, but there was an otherworldly elegance to her movements that made it clear she was anything but. She wore flowing robes that seemed woven from stardust, and a delicate crown that looked as if it had been forged from captured rainbows. Holy! Alan whispered, earning disapproving glares from nearby attendants. They don't make M like that back on Earth. The princess glided down crystalline steps that materialized beneath her feet, each movement precise and deliberate. Her silver eyes scanned the assembled crowd, and Alan felt his heart skip a beat when they briefly flickered over him. The princess will now hear petitions from visiting dignitaries, announced Flicker, who had somehow become even more formal-looking, his starry form now sporting what appeared to be a miniature ceremonial collar. Alan watched as various beings approached the princess, each presenting their case with elaborate formality. He barely paid attention to their words, too captivated by Amara herself. There was something mesmerizing about the way she carried herself, regal, yet with a hint of restless energy in her subtle movements. This is definitely the highlight of this trip, he mumbled to himself, taking another swig of the cosmic nectar. The design team really went all out on her character model. A nearby energy being turned its luminous form toward him. "Excuse me." "Oh, you know," Alan gestured vaguely, the nectar loosening his tongue even further. "This whole VR experience, or whatever it is. The princess, especially the whole perfect alien beauty thing, is a bit on the nose, but it works. Great animation. The energy being pulsed with what might have been alarm." "Sir, I don't think you should." But Alan was already moving forward. The combination of alien alcohol and absolute certainty that none of this was real had completely obliterated any sense of caution. He walked right up to the base of the crystalline steps, ignoring the gasps and murmurs from the crowd. Princess Amara turned those silver eyes on him, one elegant eyebrow arched. "You approach without being summoned, Earthling." Her voice was musical, with an accent he couldn't quite place, probably because his brain was making it up, he figured. "Yeah, sorry about that. Just wanted to say, really impressive work on your whole." He gestured at her generally, thing. The sapphire skin. Genius touch. And the eyes? Perfect alien princess vibe. Though maybe a bit over the top with the whole living starlight dress. The throne room went deathly silent, the kind of silence that, had Alan been thinking clearly, should have warned him to stop talking immediately. But he didn't. "Don't get me wrong," he continued, grinning up at her. "It's great character design. Very space royalty meets supermodel. Though you might want to tone down the whole aura of importance thing." He poked at the air near her face. "You've got a little something there." "Oh, wait, that's just your regal glow." The princess's perfect features went utterly still. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Even the stars in the ceiling appeared to dim. "You dare," she said, each word as precise as a shard of ice, "to mock the royal house of Ethelgard?" Alan's grin widened. "See? That's exactly what I mean. Perfect delivery. Very offended royalty. Do you have dialogue options, or is this all scripted?" The holographic fox appeared beside him, practically vibrating with distress. "Sir, I really must insist." Silence. The command came from everywhere at once, and the very air seemed to crystallize. A new figure had appeared at the top of the steps, a colossal being with deep sapphire skin, several shades darker than Amara's, wearing armor that appeared to be forged from collapsed stars. "Oh, wow," Alan said, still completely missing the gravity of the situation. "You must be the final boss." "I am Zarathos, sovereign regent of Ethelgard," the figure's voice resonated through Alan's bones. "And you have just gravely insulted my daughter." Something about the way he said it finally started to penetrate Alan's alcohol-and-denial-addled brain. He looked around, noting the horrified expressions on every face, those that had faces, the guards with weapons that definitely looked real and lethal, and the absolutely glacial glare Princess Amara was giving him. "Wait," he said, as the first trickle of doubt crept in. This isn't a simulation, is it?" "No," Amara said coldly. "It is not. And you're actually a princess?" "I am. And I just made fun of your everything in front of your entire court." "You did." Alan swallowed hard, suddenly very aware of how many weapons were now pointed in his direction. "I don't suppose saying my bad would help here." Zarathos' eyes blazed like twin supernovas. "By the ancient laws of Ethelgard, one who publicly insults a member of the royal family must face the consequences, which are. Alan asked, though he was pretty sure he didn't want to know. Death, the regent stated matter-of-factly. Or marriage to the one they have insulted. Alan's jaw dropped. He looked at Princess Amara, who appeared equally horrified by this pronouncement. Father, she protested. You cannot seriously suggest. The law is the law, daughter, Zarathos interrupted. He will either wed you, or face execution at dawn. Choose wisely, Earthling. Alan looked between the furious king, the mortified princess, and the various deadly weapons still trained on him. The last vestiges of the alien nectar were wearing off, leaving him with perfect clarity about his utterly screwed situation. So, he said weakly, about that death option. Guards immediately surrounded him, their weapons humming with barely contained energy. The holographic fox shook its starry head sadly. I did try to warn you about proper etiquette, it said. Princess Amara stood up, her stardust dress shimmering with her anger. Father, this is absurd. I refuse to marry this beverage distribution professional. Alan offered helpfully. She shot him a look that could have frozen a supernova. This crude, inappropriate, completely impossible. The law is clear, King Zarathos interrupted. He will be taken to the preparation chambers. The wedding will be at dawn, unless. The cold, shimmering walls of the preparation chambers did little to calm Alan's rising panic. The guards, silent and implacable, deposited him in a room filled with strange devices, pulsating energy fields, hovering robotic arms, and racks upon racks of clothing that looked more like works of art than garments. A tall, slender alien with iridescent skin and delicate antennae approached him, a tablet in hand. Welcome, Earthling. I am Zil, designated grooming artisan. Please disrobe. Alan stared at him. Grooming artisan? Is that even a real job? On Ethelgard, every role is elevated to an art, Zil replied, his voice smooth and melodic. Now, please. Time is of the essence. We have much to do before the dawn. Alan reluctantly began to peel off his sweat-stained factory uniform, feeling utterly absurd. So, what, you're going to give me a royal makeover or something? Is this part of the making me worthy of the princess plan? Zil's antennae twitched slightly. The intention is to make you presentable. Princess Amara deserves a consort who at least approximates societal standards. Ouch, Alan muttered, stepping out of his pants. He couldn't help but notice Zil's clinically detached gaze as he scanned Alan's physique. Musculature, adequate. Skin tone, suboptimal. Odor profile, requires significant adjustment. Odor profile? Alan exclaimed, offended. I showered like, 3 days ago. Zil ignored him, tapping on his tablet. Begin epidermal exfoliation, followed by chromic enhancement and olfactory recalibration. Prepare the anti-gravity hair styling unit. What followed was an ordeal that Alan would later describe as worse than getting audited by the IRS while simultaneously undergoing a root canal. He was scrubbed, polished, buffed, and sprayed with concoctions that smelled alternately of lavender and burning plastic. His hair was subjected to a series of anti-gravity manipulations that left him feeling vaguely nauseous. As Zil worked, Alan tried to glean information about his impending doom. So, this marriage thing, is it, like, a real marriage? Or is it just some kind of political stunt to appease the masses? Zil paused, considering. The sovereign regent is meticulous in his adherence to tradition. The ceremony will be legally binding under Ethelgardian law. Great, Alan groaned. So I'm actually going to be married to an alien princess who probably wants to see me vaporized. This is officially the worst birthday ever. Princess Amara is a woman of profound intellect and unwavering dedication to her people, Zil said, his tone surprisingly firm. She will fulfill her duties, whatever they may be. Yeah, I'm sure she's thrilled about the prospect of being shackled to a factory worker who insulted her in front of her entire court, Alan said sarcastically. Zill didn't reply, instead directing a robotic arm to apply a layer of shimmering pigment to Alan's skin. Hours later, Alan stood before a mirror, barely recognizing himself. His skin gleamed with a subtle, pearlescent sheen. His hair was styled into a gravity-defying wave that somehow managed to look both elegant and edgy. He was clad in a flowing robe of deep indigo, embroidered with threads of pure silver. Well? Zill asked, stepping back to admire his handiwork. What do you think? Alan stared at his reflection. I look like an extra from a space opera. I still feel like a factory worker in a space opera costume. Zill sighed. Appearances are but a superficial facade. It is your actions that will ultimately define you. Just then, the doors to the chamber slid open, and Princess Amara entered, her face a mask of icy disdain. She was even more breathtaking in person than Alan remembered, her sapphire skin radiating an almost palpable energy. Are the preparations complete? She asked, her voice cold as a glacial wind. Yes, Your Highness, Zill replied, bowing deeply. The Earthling is presentable. Amara's silver eyes swept over Alan, lingering for a moment on his face. He is still an Earthling, she said dismissively. That cannot be remedied. She turned to Alan, her gaze unwavering. Make no mistake, Earthling. This forced betrothal is abhorrent to me. You are a crude, unrefined being, and I find your very presence offensive. Alan swallowed hard. Well, that's a great start to our relationship, he mumbled. There will be no relationship, Amara said sharply. We will fulfill the requirements of the law, and nothing more. You will stay out of my way, you will not speak unless spoken to, and you will attempt to comport yourself with a modicum of dignity, which I highly doubt you possess. I get the picture, Alan said, holding up his hands. Hate me, got it. Want nothing to do with me, loud and clear. So, what happens after the wedding? Do I get my own wing of the palace? A lifetime supply of space nachos? Amara's eyes flashed with anger. You will be confined to designated quarters. Your movements will be monitored. You will be granted no privileges, and you will be given no access to sensitive information. So, basically, I'm a glorified prisoner with a fancy robe, Alan said. Precisely, Amara said. Consider yourself fortunate that I have not demanded your immediate execution. My father, the sovereign regent, only spared you due to my intervention. Alan blinked. Wait, you saved me. Do not mistake my motives, Earthling, Amara said coldly. Your death would have created a diplomatic incident with your species. I merely sought to avoid unnecessary complications. Right, of course, Alan said, deflated. So, just to be clear, you're only marrying me to avoid paperwork? Amara didn't dignify that with a response. Zill, ensure that the Earthling is familiar with the marriage protocols. I will see him at the ceremony. With a final, disdainful glance, she turned and swept out of the chamber, leaving Alan alone with Zill and a profound sense of impending doom. Well, Alan said to Zill, this is going to be fun, isn't it? Zill, ever the efficient grooming artisan, wasted no time in initiating Alan into the bewildering world of Ethelgardian customs. He began with the basics, proper posture, acceptable greetings, and the intricate art of consuming multidimensional cuisine without causing a spatial rift. Remember, Earthling, Zill said patiently, on Ethelgard, etiquette is not merely a matter of politeness. It is a reflection of one's understanding of the cosmic order. Alan, struggling to balance a shimmering cube of xenofruit on his fork, which was more of a vibrating energy field than a utensil, wasn't entirely convinced. So, if I accidentally spill this quantum jelly on the floor, does that mean I'm disrupting the balance of the universe? Not precisely, Zill said, his antennae twitching slightly. But it would certainly be considered uncouth. The list of things that were considered uncouth on Ethelgard was seemingly endless. Loud noises, direct eye contact, asking personal questions, expressing opinions without proper authorization, all were considered grave social faux pas. Alan, who had spent his life perfecting the art of casual irreverence, found himself constantly tripping over these invisible cultural landmines. He was also subjected to a crash course in Ethelgardian history, philosophy, and art. He learned about the great cosmic harmony, the principles of interdimensional physics, and the profound beauty of fractal architecture. Most of it went straight over his head. So, let me get this straight, Alan said, squinting at a holographic sculpture that seemed to be constantly folding in on itself. This represents the inherent interconnectedness of all things. Precisely, Zill said, beaming. It embodies the fundamental unity of the multiverse. Right, Alan said, nodding slowly. It looks like a bunch of spaghetti to me. Despite his best efforts, Alan remained a perpetual fish out of water. He stumbled through formal dinners, accidentally insulted visiting dignitaries, and generally managed to embarrass himself and Princess Amara at every turn. The princess, for her part, made no effort to conceal her disdain. She treated Alan with icy politeness in public, but in private, she barely acknowledged his existence. One evening, after Alan had inadvertently set fire to a ceremonial tapestry during a diplomatic reception, Amara summoned him to her private chambers. "Must you make a mockery of everything?" she said, her silver eyes blazing with anger. "Your incompetence is not only embarrassing, but it is also jeopardizing my position. My advisors are already questioning my judgment in agreeing to this farce." "Hey, I'm trying, okay?" Alan said defensively. "This isn't exactly my area of expertise. I'm a factory worker, not a galactic diplomat." "That is precisely the problem," Amara said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You are a factory worker who is masquerading as a royal consort. You are a charade, a distraction, a blight upon Ethelgardian society." Alan stared at her, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "You know what? I didn't ask for any of this. I was perfectly happy stamping fusion drives on robo-cleaners. You're the one who dragged me into this mess." "I had no choice," Amara said, her voice softening slightly. "My father, he is bound by tradition. But you could at least attempt to mitigate the damage you are causing." "How?" Alan asked, throwing his hands up in exasperation. "How can I possibly fit in here? I don't speak the language, I don't understand the customs, and I don't know the difference between a nebula and a noodle." Amara was silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on some distant point. "There is one thing," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "One thing?" Alan asked, his curiosity piqued. "My father is planning to engage in a trade negotiation with the Kthar Collective," Amara explained. "They are a notoriously difficult species, and their customs are unconventional." "Unconventional how?" Alan asked, his stomach sinking. "They communicate primarily through olfactory signals," Amara said. "Their sense of smell is so acute that they can detect subtle nuances in pheromones that are imperceptible to other species." Alan stared at her, his mind racing. "Wait a minute, odor profile?" "Precisely," Amara said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Zill mentioned that your odor profile required significant adjustment. It seems that your natural scent is unique." "Unique how?" Alan asked, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "It is unpredictable," Amara said. "It fluctuates depending on your emotional state. It is chaotic." "Chaotic good, or chaotic evil?" Alan asked, only half joking. "It is simply chaotic," Amara said. "And that, surprisingly, may be the key to negotiating with the Kthar Collective." "You want me to negotiate with alien overlords using my body odor?" Alan asked incredulously. "It is a long shot," Amara admitted. "But it is the only chance we have. The Kthar collective values unpredictability. They believe that chaos contains the seeds of innovation. Your unique scent may be the key to unlocking a mutually beneficial trade agreement. Alan stared at her, his mind reeling. So, you're telling me that my lack of social graces, my complete ignorance of Ethelgardian culture, and my generally unpleasant odor may actually be an asset? It is possible, Amara said, her silver eyes sparkling with a hint of amusement. But do not get your hopes up, Earthling. You are still, at heart, a factory worker. But perhaps there is more to you than meets the eye. The prospect of negotiating with alien overlords using his body odor was, to put it mildly, terrifying. Alan spent the next few days locked in a training chamber with Zill, attempting to master the art of olfactory diplomacy. The key, Earthling, Zill explained patiently, is to control your emotions. The Kthar collective can sense even the slightest shift in your pheromones. You must project an aura of calm confidence, even when you are inwardly terrified. Alan, who was currently sweating profusely and emitting a faint aroma of burnt rubber, found this advice difficult to follow. Easy for you to say, he said, wiping his brow with a towel. You're not the one who's about to be sniffed by a bunch of giant alien noses. Think of it as a performance, Zill said encouragingly. You are an actor, and your body odor is your instrument. You must use it to convey your message. Alan tried to focus on Zill's words, but his mind kept wandering back to the looming trade negotiations. The Kthar collective was notorious for its ruthless bargaining tactics. They were rumored to be able to smell lies, detect hidden agendas, and exploit weaknesses with uncanny precision. The fate of Ethelgard rested on his shoulders, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was woefully unprepared. As the day of the negotiations approached, Alan found himself spending more and more time with Princess Amara. They worked late into the night, poring over trade agreements, studying Ktharian customs, and practicing their olfactory responses. To his surprise, Alan discovered that he enjoyed Amara's company. Beneath her icy exterior, she was intelligent, passionate, and fiercely dedicated to her people. He began to see her not just as a regal princess, but as a complex and vulnerable individual. One evening, as they were reviewing a particularly dense trade proposal, Alan couldn't help but ask a question that had been nagging at him for days. "Why did you save me, Amara?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You said it was to avoid a diplomatic incident, but I don't believe you. There had to be another reason." Amara looked away, her silver eyes clouded with a mixture of sadness and regret. "My father, he is a good man, but he is also a product of his time. He believes in tradition, in the old ways. He sees the world in black and white. And you don't?" Alan asked. "I believe that the world is a complex tapestry of shades of gray," Amara said. "I believe that change is inevitable, and that we must adapt or perish. I saw something in you, Alan. Something different. Something unpredictable." "You mean my body odor?" Alan asked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Perhaps," Amara said, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "But also, a spark of defiance, a refusal to conform. I thought that perhaps you could be an ally in my efforts to modernize Ethelgard." "Modernize Ethelgard?" Alan asked, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "Our society is stagnant," Amara explained. "We are clinging to outdated traditions, stifling innovation, and isolating ourselves from the rest of the galaxy. I want to open our borders, embrace new technologies, and create a more equitable society." "That sounds ambitious," Alan said. "It is necessary," Amara said. "But I cannot do it alone. My father is resistant to change, and my advisors are too afraid to challenge him. I need someone who can see the world from a different perspective, someone who is not bound by Ethelgardian customs." Alan stared at her, his heart pounding in his chest. "You want me, a factory worker from Earth, to help you revolutionize Ethelgard?" "I believe you have the potential," Amara said, her voice filled with conviction. But you must prove yourself. You must succeed in the negotiations with the Kthar Collective. The day of the negotiations arrived, and Alan found himself standing before the Kthar delegation, a group of towering, insectoid beings with glistening exoskeletons and antennae that twitched with barely concealed curiosity. The lead negotiator, a formidable Kthar named Xyler, approached Alan, his antennae quivering inquisitively. "You are the Earthling," he said, his voice a deep, resonant hum. "I have heard interesting things about your scent." Alan took a deep breath, trying to project an aura of calm confidence. "I hope you find it agreeable," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Xyler tilted his head, his antennae twitching faster. "It is unexpected," he said. "It is chaotic. It is intriguing." And with that, the negotiations began. Alan, drawing on his newfound knowledge of Kthar customs and his innate ability to improvise, managed to navigate the treacherous waters of olfactory diplomacy. He countered Xyler's ruthless bargaining tactics with unexpected bursts of humor, challenged his assumptions with unconventional arguments, and even managed to use his fluctuating body odor to his advantage, projecting an aura of vulnerability when necessary and a scent of fierce determination when the stakes were high. To everyone's surprise, including his own, Alan succeeded. He secured a trade agreement that was not only fair and equitable but also paved the way for future collaboration between Ethelgard and the Kthar Collective. As the Kthar delegation departed, Princess Amara approached Alan, her silver eyes filled with admiration. "You did it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You actually did it." "We did it," Alan corrected her, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "We did it together." Amara smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that transformed her face. "Thank you, Alan," she said. "You have proven yourself to be a true ally." The success of the Kthar collective trade negotiations had a profound impact on Ethelgard. Alan, once reviled as a crude outsider, was now hailed as a hero. His advice was sought by politicians, his opinions were valued by academics, and his presence was even tolerated by the more conservative members of the royal court. Princess Amara, emboldened by Alan's support, began to push forward with her plans for modernizing Ethelgard. She opened the borders to new species, embraced innovative technologies, and initiated reforms to create a more equitable society. But her efforts were met with resistance. The old guard, clinging to tradition, saw her reforms as a threat to their power and privilege. They whispered doubts about her judgment, questioned her alliances, and even hinted at the possibility of treason. The pressure mounted, and Amara found herself increasingly isolated. She turned to Alan for support, and he, in turn, offered her his unwavering loyalty. Their relationship deepened, evolving from an unlikely alliance into a genuine friendship. They spent hours discussing their hopes, their fears, and their dreams for the future of Ethelgard. Alan discovered that Amara was not just a princess, but a visionary, a reformer, and a true leader. And Amara, in turn, saw in Alan not just a crude earthling, but a man of courage, compassion, and unwavering integrity. But their growing bond was threatened by the looming specter of their forced betrothal. The wedding day was fast approaching, and Amara knew that she could not go through with it. Marrying Alan would not only be a betrayal of her own heart but also a political disaster. It would confirm the suspicions of her enemies and undermine her efforts to modernize Ethelgard. One evening, as they stood together on a balcony overlooking the shimmering city, Amara turned to Alan, her silver eyes filled with sorrow. "I cannot marry you, Alan," she said, her voice barely audible. "It is not right. It is not fair to you, and it is not fair to Ethelgard." Alan stared at her, his heart sinking. "I know," he said quietly. "I never expected you to. I care for you deeply, Alan," Amara said, her voice filled with emotion. "But I cannot allow my personal feelings to cloud my judgment. My duty is to my people, and I must do what is best for them, even if it means sacrificing my own happiness." "What will you do?" Alan asked. I will renounce the betrothal, Amara said. I will tell my father that I cannot marry you, and I will face the consequences, whatever they may be. What if he tries to force you? Alan asked, his voice filled with concern. Then I will abdicate the throne, Amara said, her voice filled with determination. I will not allow myself to be used as a pawn in a political game. Alan stared at her, his admiration growing with each passing moment. You are a remarkable woman, Amara, he said. I am simply trying to do what is right, Amara said, her voice filled with humility. And what is right is for you to return to Earth, to your own life, to your own people. What if I don't want to leave? Alan asked, his voice filled with longing. Amara looked away, her silver eyes clouded with sadness. You must, she said. It is the only way. The wedding day arrived, and the royal court of Ethelgard was filled with anticipation. Dignitaries from across the galaxy had gathered to witness the union of Princess Amara and the Earthling hero. But as Amara stood before her father, the sovereign regent,